are the odds we'll see a presidential run by Chris Christie? Well, we're going to ask InsiderNJ columnist Alan Steinberg. First, though, New Jersey's troubled MVC, the Motor Vehicles Commission. Since the pandemic started, we've been seeing long lines and a new online scheduling system at the New Jersey Motor Vehicles Commission. There's been so much frustration, along with many COVID-related closings. There is a new bill proposed that would keep MVC offices open. Joining us now is the bill's sponsor, Senator Anthony Bucco, who represents New Jersey's 25th legislative district. That takes in parts of Morris and Somerset counties. Senator, so good to see you.
It's good to see you, Laura. How is everything?
Oh, I can't complain. Can't complain. Although there are a lot of complaints, there always have been when it comes to motor vehicles, but even more. So can you talk to us a little bit about what in the world is going on at the MVC?
Well, it just seems like there's a lack of planning going on. And it's a shame that as legislators, we have to legislate common sense. But the MVC really has given us no choice here. We've seen, over the last year that the agencies are closing in record numbers. And, when they're open, there are lines around the buildings. So at this point, this legislation would require the agencies to remain open. And if they have to, for some reason, close, then they're going to be required to use either a mobile unit there to transact business, or set up some other mechanism so people can handle their transactions without delay. Because also, these agencies handle different types of transactions. So if an agency shuts down, what happens is now you may have to travel an even farther distance in order to get to an agency that handles the type of transaction that you need. So we've got to keep these agencies open.
Right. I mean, and the business that is done, it is, licenses expire, young people need to get their permits, and there is such a backup. So I think that or I should ask, are you seeing a ripple effect, not just as a long line at the MVC, but other agencies and other people affected by this?
We are, and that's what prompted this legislation. Right now, if one employee in the agency contracts COVID, the entire agency is shut down. Companies are handling this process in a different fashion. Some are going to split shifts so that if an employee on one shift contracts COVID, they don't have to shut the entire operation down. The other shift can take over. So there's ways to handle this. There's also technology now. Employees could wear a little disc. I've seen this in manufacturing companies where an employee wears a little disc on their name tag. And that disc records every person that they come within 6 feet of during the course of their workday. So that if an employee gets sick, all the company has to do is hit a button and they know all of the folks that person came in contact with during the course of the day. So it's only those people that have to quarantine, not the entire company being shut down. This is stuff that's very easily obtainable. These are things that with a little bit of planning could take place, and these agencies wouldn't have to be shut down. As early as last week, we had 7 out of, I think, 39 agencies shut down at one particular time. And that's just unacceptable.
What struck me is that a hearing recently, the head of the MVC, the director, Sue Fulton, gave her agency an F, a D or an F for the long lines and the wait times drivers are experiencing in the first few months of the pandemic. And I'm thinking, well, you're the head of it. Can you, what are you able to change it? And what were your thoughts on?
Well, look, I think she's absolutely correct in giving it an F, but the buck stops with her. She's the head of the agency, so she's essentially given herself an F. I mean, just a little bit of planning. I asked for this over a year ago when I wrote to them and said, what's your reopening plan, when they were shut down completely? And I got no response, crickets. And then we saw what happened when they reopened. So, I mean, all it takes is a little planning, a little common sense, and, these transactions could be handled in a much more efficient and effective manner. So I'm hoping that this legislation will gain some traction. I can tell you I've got colleagues on both sides of the aisle that are anxious to sign on. So I'm hoping that we're going to be able to get this legislation through the legislature so that within 90 days, we can get a plan from the agency to tell us how they're going to open up.
Yeah. Well, what are your thoughts about Sue Fulton? She's been nominated as the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Manpower and Reserve Affairs by President Joe Biden.
Well, look, I wish her luck. But, she's got to do her job here until she gets through the Senate and she's appointed and assumes her position in Washington. And I think that the governor needs to look real hard at who he's going to put in charge of this agency. I think that it's got to be somebody that's got some experience and that knows what they're doing and is able to start streamlining some of these things. We have a lot of transactions online now. We need to continue that process, but we also need to look at how we open these agencies up so that people can actually go there and get the business done that they need.
Right. Well, and then the backlog that has been created as a result. I was telling you before we went on air, I've got a daughter. I'm on a wait list to be able to take an exam that she wasn't able to take in school because schools were closed last year. And, she's going to be 17 before we even get into the driving school. And I would imagine a lot of parents, their young people drive not just for fun, but they drive so that they can get to their job, so their parents aren't driving them. So there's got to be a real impediment for so many families trying to get their, get what they need to be able to live their life and make a living.
We're hearing this more and more. And the driving schools are having problems because they can't get their transactions taken care of. And that backs up the ability to get these 17-year-olds their licenses. And let me tell you, we've all been there and we know how important that day is and how it's circled on your calendar. And you're counting the hours and the minutes until you can get your license and have a little bit of that freedom. So I really feel sorry for these young kids who are going through this mess because, not only have they had the problems with school and, the inability to be with their friends and socialize, but they're also getting taken away from them the ability to get their license when it's one of the most important things that is part of their young lives.
Yeah, it's one of those milestones, and they've lost so much, and then losing that ability to go on that birthday. Yeah, you said it's a big deal, and I'm hearing it from my own daughter. Senator Anthony Bucco, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
It's my pleasure. Take care.
You too. Stay with New Jersey Politics. Coming up after the break, we're going to be talking with columnist Alan Steinberg on President Joe Biden's address to Congress. That and more is coming up. Stay with us.
2020 felt like a dark tunnel, and while 2020 is over, the impact is not. The pandemic affected both our physical and mental health.
We started the Cody Fund for Mental Health to change lives, so we want you to know about NJ211.
It's a referral service for anyone in crisis, even children.
I am living proof that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
And it's not a train, it's help. It's NJ211.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Butler-Smith, and I'm the founder of Morph Mom. I'm thrilled to introduce our show, The Happy Hour. Each week, along with my 5 co-hosts, we will feature guest speakers who share personal journeys of strength and hope, along with tips and financial tools to bring inspiration to you to find your next step. You can watch The Happy Hour on News 12 Plus throughout the New York tri-state area. You can find us on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. on Verizon Fios Channel 530 or Optimum Channel 61. See you Sunday.
Welcome to Distinctively Outdoors. Here at Distinctively Outdoors, we help our customers seek the ultimate experience for the best outdoor design. Distinctively Outdoors provides award-winning products that you can have right in your backyard, such as breathtaking kitchens and appliances, custom pergolas, quality outdoor furniture, and our relaxing hot tubs. Visit our store today in Parsippany, New Jersey, on Route 46, or call us at 973-828-1288 to help you get started on your dream outdoor environment.
Welcome back to New Jersey Politics. Joining me now is InsiderNJ columnist Alan Steinberg, and we are going to be talking a little bit about President Biden's first address to Congress. Now, the president vowed in his speech to pay for his proposals, including $1.9 trillion in American Jobs Plan without increasing the deficit. But he also promised not to raise taxes on those making less than $400,000 a year. Plus, there's a plan for universal preschool for 3 and 4-year-olds, plus a plan to make 2 years of community college for free. So, Alan, that is a lot. So looking at the big picture, just overall, what did you think of President Biden's first speech?
In terms of the delivery, in terms of his communication skills, I thought it was excellent. Joe Biden has a unique ability to convey empathy, to convey simplicity without being superficial. And on the whole, I thought in terms of style, it was an A. I do have problems with the content, and let me go right to the heart of it. I favor his infrastructure program insofar as it's only infrastructure. I am very concerned about the non-infrastructure items, however desirable they may be. For example, paying for home health care and home care for the aged. I went through this experience with my mother who had Alzheimer's and was afflicted for almost 8 years of her life. So I'm sympathetic, but the government cannot finance everything. There are limits to what the government can do. And infrastructure is financed in a different way. Infrastructure can be financed through borrowing as long as you have enough in the budget to amortize, pay off the borrowing. It's different when you're talking about grants and non-infrastructure items, such as subsidizing healthcare, free community college. These are current expenses, and you have to subsidize them through taxes. And the question is, how much is the public willing to pay? But infrastructure, I'm all for water infrastructure, broadband infrastructure. I think that Biden will get that in the end.
Yeah, one of the things that struck me, just as a parent, was listening to the education plan, because, part of me is saying, well, how do you afford to do preschool and 2 years of community college? And then there's a part of me that's saying, how can you afford not to invest in our young people in education? Then it goes back to, well, we've got K through 12, and a lot of them aren't even opening. They're not always necessarily meeting students' needs as it is. So what were your thoughts on the universal preschool for 3 and 4-year-olds and 2 years of community college?
I think, Laura, both your observations are right. And I can favor both of those programs up to an extent. Certainly universal pre-K and preschool, I'm all for. But however, in terms of community college, I think that can also serve a good function because community college programs are excellent in terms of training our workers for the next generation in terms of high-tech skills and all the rest. But there has to be some sort of fiscal limits. And the question is, again, I'm not sure that just taxing the wealthy will pay for it. You may have to have taxes on the middle class. I want to see the evidence that just taxing the wealthy will do it. And it will do it without somehow depressing economic activity. That is the difficult question.
Well, and the devil's in the details, right? This is
100%.
First address. It's broad, so he's going to try and hit on a lot of things. Well, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie was on ABC giving his response, and he had, no surprise, a very, very strong opinion on the president's address. So let's listen to that.
Well, just to respond quickly to what Rob said, the University of Pennsylvania, certainly not a bastion of conservatism, has looked at the Biden jobs plan and said it will create no new net jobs and will cause a lower GDP. But here's my overarching thought about it, David. The words of this speech sounded like what you would hear from a 15-year-old if you gave him a credit card with no credit limit on it, except the words came out of the mouth of an adult who should know better.
All right, he's not afraid to say what he thinks, but what I'm also kind of thinking is he trying to lay down the gauntlet again, preparing for a possible run in 2024 for president?
Chris Christie gives rudeness a bad name. Yes, he is planning to run in 2024. He will run until he's 100 years old. He should live and be well. But Chris Christie is the modern day version of Harold Stassen. Harold Stassen used to run for president every 4 years, and he kept losing by larger and larger margins. The other factor is interesting. There are polls that show that Chris Christie is even more unpopular in New Jersey than Donald Trump is. However, the further you go outside of New Jersey, the more popular he is. In New Hampshire, he always gets good crowds. But when New Hampshire finds out how unpopular he is in New Jersey, That's a horse of a different garage. That's a totally different matter. He reminds me of John Lindsay. Lindsay, New York City was hated. When you got outside of New Jersey and New York City, he was the mayor of New York City for 8 years. When you got outside New York City, people thought he was great until they found out what New York City thought of him. So that'll happen to Chris Christie. Let me make an observation as to the substance of what he said. He is right in one sense. The infrastructure program per se does not create new jobs. However, without an infrastructure program, the economy will crash. You need the infrastructure program in terms of clean water, in terms of broadband access, in terms of transportation, all of without which the economy is headed for another depression at some point. So he's not really giving a full economic picture.
Right. Well, I mean, you mentioned the Great Depression. After listening to the speech and, reading a lot, there is a concern of, this is the modern day version of the Roaring 20s, which 100 years ago led to the Depression, too much spending. You look at certain investments in Bitcoin and Dogecoin, all kinds of things. You just wonder, oh gosh, where are we headed?
What caused the Depression was the Smoot-Hawley tariff of 1931. The Smoot-Hawley tariff created tariff barriers that resulted in a loss of our foreign markets. That's what concerns me about in a Republican Party today, about the new protectionism that Donald Trump advocated. So the reckless investments, you're quite right, can lead to economic problems. But I don't think the infrastructure investments are reckless. I think they are very well founded. I think in the end, Joe Biden will get it. And I think they will have some bipartisan support on that.
All right. Well, Alan Steinberg, thank you so much for your insight and analysis. It's always so good to see you.
I'm always delighted to be on with New Jersey's preeminent journalist of all media, Laura Jones.
Alan, thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for watching New Jersey Politics. You can watch online at New Jersey On Air and follow us on social media. I'm Laura Jones. We'll see you next time.